Welcome to this presentation for nurse practitioners regarding some important updates from the New York State Workers' Compensation Board. We'll cover two main topics, the expanded provider law and what it means for nurse practitioners who wish to treat injured workers as part of the New York State Workers' Compensation System, and the Workers' Compensation Board's OnBoard project, a new system we're building that will make interacting with the board and participating in the workers' comp system even easier for nurse practitioners and all stakeholders. As part of the OnBoard overview, we'll be including a basic timeline so you'll understand what's coming and when to expect the full system. We'll detail what OnBoard limited release is, why we are creating a limited release, and what processes limited release will change for the nurse practitioner community. We'll then go over registration information for OnBoard limited release. Next, we'll go over some frequently asked questions we've received about OnBoard limited release, share next steps that nurse practitioners can take, and end with some helpful resources. Before we get into OnBoard, let's quickly review the expanded provider law, what it means for nurse practitioners, and how you can apply to become board authorized to treat injured workers if you aren't already. Under the expanded provider law, which went into effect January 1st, 2020, certain types of medical providers can be authorized for certain services. Let's first take a look at what board-authorized nurse practitioners can and cannot do in the workers' compensation system. The table on this slide illustrates what board-authorized nurse practitioners can treat and what they can determine when treating injured workers. We'll get into the authorization process in just a few minutes. While nurse practitioners have always been able to treat injured workers, those who are employed by a medical practice and those who are self-employed must now obtain their own authorization. This means they'll be listed under their own name in our registry of authorized providers. A nurse practitioner can submit a prior authorization request for MTG and non-MTG body part requests, as well as for medications and durable medical equipment, or DME. They're authorized to treat workers' compensation patients, but not to perform IMEs. So, why should a nurse practitioner apply for authorization to treat injured workers? By becoming board authorized, you can help dramatically improve injured workers' access to health care. And the expanded provider law has already brought thousands of new providers into the New York State workers' compensation system. The board is making it easier than ever to treat injured workers as a result of both OnBoard and the other system improvements we've made, including virtual hearings, our drug formulary, universal billing via Form CMS 1500, and enhanced medical fee schedules for board-authorized providers. You can learn more about these improvements and initiatives by visiting wcb.ny.gov/betterboard. How does a provider become board authorized? Nurse practitioners would sign up to use the New York State Workers' Compensation Board medical portal and/or log in with the credentials that have been assigned to you, complete the required training specific to your profession, and complete the new provider authorization request online application. Your authorization runs concurrent with your state license. Whenever you need to renew your state license, you must also renew and update your information on file with the board. For more information on the expanded provider law and how to become board authorized, visit the board's website at wcb.ny.gov and type Expanded Provider Law into the search bar. Now that you're familiar with the authorization process, let's dive into our main intention for today, to fill you in on our latest initiative to make participation in the workers' comp system even easier, the redesign of our business information system, OnBoard, with a focus on an early component to the system that we are calling OnBoard Limited Release. We have recently communicated about OnBoard with a new video, a web page, frequently asked questions, and informational webinars for healthcare providers. So you may already be familiar with what OnBoard is. OnBoard is the system we have been developing with our integration partner, CapTech Consulting, to modernize workers' compensation system processes in New York State, changing the way stakeholders interact with the board and with each other. OnBoard will replace our current paper-based systems, such as eCase and CIS, with a brand new single web-based platform. When fully implemented, OnBoard will improve and expand access to real-time claim data with new electronic self-service features to improve and simplify interacting with the board, and it will virtually eliminate paper forms. This will improve system responsiveness to stakeholder needs and ultimately lead to providing New York State's injured workers with greater access to benefits and medical care. Since the expanded provider law went into effect on January 1, 2020, there are significantly more providers who may treat injured workers. That means a significant increase in the number of registrations the board expects to receive. Because of this, the volume of forms the board receives and processes is expected to drastically increase. And OnBoard, our new system, will bring the new efficiencies, automation, and paperless transactions necessary to process claims and ensure the injured workers of New York State receive the most timely treatment and benefits possible. This multi-year project began in summer 2019, with the full system to be available in 2023. But we identified opportunities to implement some early process improvements and functionality sooner in what we are calling OnBoard Limited Release. OnBoard Limited Release is tentatively scheduled for summer 2021 and will include a new online process for prior authorization requests as well as the online submission of Form HP1. On January 24, 2022, Phase 2 will be available, which includes eClaims EDI R3.1. The International Association of Industrial Accident Boards and Commissions claims electronic data interchange is a national standard for trading partners to electronically submit employer claims data. Most national insurance carriers already use the claims EDI R3.1 standard in the jurisdictions that have adopted it. The technology is recognized as the national best practice for first report of injury and subsequent report of injury, and has a proven track record of success. Electronic claims filing supports the board's continuing efforts to improve services to New York's injured workers and their employers. As mentioned, OnBoard Limited Release will go into production and be used in summer 2021. Let's go over why we chose to create a limited release and the reasoning behind our focus on the processes this first rollout will contain. To manage these processes efficiently and successfully, this limited release focuses on the automation of prior authorization requests and the submission of Form HP 1.0, the request for decision on unpaid medical bills. A PAR is required when an injured worker's healthcare provider is seeking approval from the payer before the costs associated with a specific treatment are covered under workers' comp. There are several categories of treatment that require prior authorization. The board requires prior authorization information that's related to workers' compensation treatment to be shared with and sometimes adjudicated by the board's medical director's office. All improvements have been designed to make it easier and more streamlined for providers to participate in the workers' compensation system. OnBoard Limited Release will facilitate electronic communications in the PAR process for all parties involved and, immediately upon rollout, will replace the following paper forms: the attending doctor's request for optional prior approval and carriers/employer's response, Form MG1. Here's a very important note. With OnBoard Limited Release, the MG1 process will be optional for providers, but mandatory for carriers. And these next two forms will also be replaced: the attending doctor's request for approval of variants and carrier's response, Form MG2, and the attending doctor's request for authorization and carrier's response, Form C4 Auth. With these processes now going online, you will no longer use paper and will no longer use faxing. So again, when OnBoard Limited Release is available, the paper forms MG1, MG2, and C4 Auth will be eliminated. To transition away from paper forms, limited release will move the PAR process completely online and will include the following. The existing MG1 process will be known as confirmation in the new system. It'll be confirmation that the treatment the provider wishes to deliver is consistent with the medical treatment guidelines, with a mandatory time frame for insurer response of 8 business days. The confirmation process is optional for providers, but if submitted, it is mandatory for payers. It's used to request confirmation from the insurance carrier that the procedure or test is based on a correct application of the MTGs. This was previously done using the attending doctor's request for optional prior approval and carrier's employer's response, Form MG1. Mtg Variants requests will replace the attending doctor's request for approval of variance and carrier's response, Form MG2. The mandatory time frame for insurer response is in accordance with general construction law. Insurers must respond within 15 calendar days of receipt of a request from a healthcare provider. But if an insurer decides to request an independent medical examination or the review of records, it must notify the chair within 5 business days of such decision and respond within 30 calendar days of receipt of the request. Mtg Variants is used to request testing or treatment that is outside or exceeds the medical treatment guidelines. This was previously done using the attending doctor's request for approval of variance and carrier's response, Form MG2. The Special Services PAR includes the 12 medical treatment guideline-related requests previously done by using C4 Auth. It has the same 15 or 30-day response time frame just mentioned. Mtg Special Services is used to confirm a telephone request for written authorization for special services costing over $1,000 in a non-emergency situation. This was previously done using the attending doctor's request for authorization and carrier's response, Form C4 Auth. The non-MTG over $1,000 PAR will be used for non-MTG treatments costing more than $1,000 with a mandatory time frame for insurer response of 30 calendar days in accordance with the general construction law. There will also be a PAR for non-MTG treatment costing less than or equal to $1,000 with a mandatory insurer response time of 8 business days. OnBoard limited release will also include medication PARs, since it's replacing the current drug formulary prior authorization request process. The mandatory time frame for insurer response is 4 calendar days. And just a note that medical marijuana requests will now be done via a medication PAR in the new system. Part of OnBoard limited release will be the introduction of a durable medical equipment, or DME, fee schedule. Certain types of DME will require prior authorization, with a mandatory time frame for insurer response being 4 calendar days in accordance with general construction law. Similar to the current drug formulary prior authorization process, all completed Parse submissions will be transferred to the case folder in eCase for viewing. OnBoard limited release will also digitize and streamline the submission of paper form HP1, Request for Decision on Unpaid Medical Bills, which will be referred to as HP 1.0 in the new system. Once implemented, providers will submit Form HP 1.0 solely using the web-based limited release platform. Nurse practitioners will be able to do this as well. We should note that the rest of the HP1 process will continue using the same procedures as it does today. Only the initial submission will be done using OnBoard limited release. Now let's go over what benefits nurse practitioners can expect when using limited release. You'll be able to easily see your submissions and requests on a concise dashboard that gives you 24/7 access to your queue of active submissions and requests for you to view and take action on. As mentioned previously, when starting a submission or request, you no longer need to remember a form name or a number or where you get these forms. This will give you a clearer path to authorization, ultimately giving injured workers faster access to appropriate treatment. Throughout the process, you'll also have the ability to receive email or text message status updates on PARs in progress. You'll be able to assign delegates to facilitate the submission of PARs and their status. These delegates will be able to assemble all the information needed within the PAR, which will then appear on your dashboard for review and ultimate submission. Providers and carriers will have the ability to communicate through OnBoard limited release. The carrier will be able to request additional information from the provider, and the provider will be able to respond in real time. This could affect whether the carrier approves a requested treatment if they are provided with additional information. They will receive a notification in the dashboard if the insurer requests additional information. Note, response to an inquiry is not mandatory and does not stop the clock in terms of the mandatory time periods for PAR response. Others will benefit from limited release as well. Injured workers will receive more timely health care. Insurers, third-party administrators, and medical suppliers will have a simpler system for prior authorization requests. The board's medical director's office will also be using OnBoard limited release for the reviews that office performs. The process flow that nurse practitioners will follow in OnBoard limited release is very similar to what authorized nurse practitioners are doing now for a medication prior authorization. It will start by accessing the medical portal. You'll perform a case search and then answer a series of questions related to the case and what type of care you want to provide. The request will be submitted, and the system will provide automatic routing and automatic timing associated with the request. The request will automatically navigate the review process within the system. As previously mentioned, you can assign delegates to perform all of these steps, but you yourself must actually submit the request. Now let's go over registration information for OnBoard limited release access. Nurse practitioners requesting to use the medical portal to access OnBoard limited release, or to apply to become board authorized if you're not already, will need an ny.gov user ID and password. Our updated medical portal section on the website contains all of the details and information you'll need on how to register and get an ny.gov user ID and password, and extend registration to others for accessing OnBoard limited release. You can also find information on applications currently available in the medical portal, such as the drug formulary and Mtg lookup tool. Note, if you have already signed up for the medical portal and you have a board-assigned user ID, you do not need to register again. Registration for the medical portal will give nurse practitioners access to OnBoard limited release. There's no separate registration needed to use the OnBoard limited release system. Registration for the medical portal does not automatically provide access for electronic XML submission of medical bills, Form CMS 1500 submissions. After healthcare providers register for the medical portal, a separate registration is required for XML forms submission. For more information, visit the board's website at wcb.ny.gov and search Registration for XML Forms Submission. All healthcare providers who have access to the medical portal today will automatically be granted access to an online healthcare provider administration function of the medical portal. This will enable healthcare providers to add delegated users to assist with the drafting of PARs and submitting Form HP 1.0. The healthcare provider administrator will use their medical portal login credentials to access the healthcare provider administration application for assigning delegates. For more information, please visit wcb.ny.gov and search Healthcare Provider Online Administration. Update your email and mailing address. The mailing and email address associated with your medical portal account will be used by the board to contact you if there's an issue with your account and for other important correspondence. The email address associated with your account will automatically default to the email you have on file for current drug formulary requests. This email will be displayed and can be updated within the My Profile section of your medical portal account. PAR notifications will be sent to this email address as well, so please review the email you have on file and update if necessary. The mailing address that healthcare providers currently have on file with the board for the receipt of claim notices and decisions will be the address displayed on PAR documents. To update this mailing address, board-authorized providers should access the medical portal and select Update Authorization Information. For more information regarding registration and accessing the new system, visit wcb.ny.gov and search Medical Portal Overview and Access and Administration. Next, we'll walk through some of the most frequently asked questions we have received regarding OnBoard Limited Release. Will OnBoard Limited Release replace the current New York State Workers' Compensation Drug Formulary? Yes. Drug formulary submissions will be done in OnBoard Limited Release and will be referred to as medication Parse. Here's a screenshot example showing the option of selecting drug formulary in the system. Who can submit a prior authorization request? Board-authorized healthcare providers and out-of-state healthcare providers will submit all PAR types in the new system. Certain types of healthcare providers can only submit certain types of PARs. Healthcare providers can establish delegates who will have the ability to draft a prior authorization request completely. However, the final submission of the drafted PAR will need to be done by the treating healthcare provider. How will providers be notified with status updates? Providers and their delegates will have their own dashboard with a status column that will update PAR submissions to the most recent status and level of review. Providers and their delegates will also receive email or text message notifications informing them of an update and that their attention is needed. Will the OnBoard Limited Release dashboard show the healthcare provider's full history of PARs, or will it only show requests from summer 2021 and forward? OnBoard Limited Release will only show requests made after the new system is implemented. All requests made prior to the implementation of OnBoard Limited Release will continue in the previous process and be viewable in eCase. How will healthcare providers register and when? All online user administrators for the current medical portal and drug formulary system will automatically be granted access to OnBoard Limited Release in summer 2021. This will enable administrators to add users to the additional roles that will be required for their organization, as well as add new notification emails. The administrator will use their medical portal or drug formulary login credentials to access OnBoard Limited Release. Will an insurer have the option to opt out of the attending doctor's request for optional prior approval and carriers/employers response, Form MG1, in limited release? No. A confirmation PAR in OnBoard Limited Release, previously done using Form MG1, will be optional for the healthcare provider to submit. If a healthcare provider submits a confirmation PAR, the insurer's response will be mandatory. Will the patient's pharmacy be notified through OnBoard Limited Release once a medication is authorized? OnBoard Limited Release will notify the pharmacy benefit manager, if there is one, that a prior authorization request has been submitted, and it will show whether it's been approved or denied for the release of the requested medication. In addition, insurers who have a PBM will be required to designate a PBM contact who will receive an email or text message notification of each decision throughout the review process. How is the denial of an Mtg Variants PAR, previously Form MG2, initiated? Insurers will receive the requesting provider's variance in OnBoard Limited Release. There are two levels to the insurer's response: auto-escalate deny or grant in part to level 2. If the insurer denies the request, it will go back to the healthcare provider's dashboard, where the provider may escalate if they desire. Will the new system confirm that a healthcare provider's request is or is not consistent with the MTGs? No. The system will not automatically confirm whether treatment is consistent with the MTGs. Part of the provider's submission includes the provider denoting whether their requested treatment is consistent with an MTG. The insurer needs to review the request and respond whether they agree or not, based on the specifics of the claimant's case. The MTG lookup tool makes searching the MTGs quick and easy. You can learn more about the MTG Lookup tool by searching MTG Lookup Tool on the board's website. Can a medical report be uploaded with Parse submissions? Yes. When submitting a form in the OnBoard limited release system, there will be the option to upload multiple documents. The total size cannot exceed 30 megabytes. Examples of attachments include, but are not limited to, diagnostic testing, diagnostic imaging, office notes from a specific visit, a letter of medical necessity, or an image from a surgical procedure. Will the current time periods for insurer response remain the same once the new system is implemented? Most current timeframes for insurer review and response will remain the same as they are today. If an insurer does not respond within the designated time frame, an order of the chair may be issued, but only for those requests that are eligible for an order of the chair. The Special Services time frame will now mirror the Variants time frames. If the insurer denies a Level 1 or Level 2 PAR, can they request an IME? If so, does the 30-day timeline remain in effect? Yes. An IME may be requested depending on the PAR type. In those cases, the insurer will indicate the decision to get an IME in the system within 5 days of the PAR being submitted. If the Level 1 or Level 2 reviewer decides they would like an IME, they would have to make that decision within this time frame and should not respond with an approval or denial until the IME has been completed, or before the time frame for response has expired to avoid an automatic order of the chair in the case of non-MTG or DME requests. Will a durable medical equipment fee schedule be included in limited release? Yes, the DME fee schedule will be available when OnBoard limited release is implemented. Some items on the DME fee schedule will require prior authorization, others will not. In addition to the DME fee schedule, other implementations are timing up with the availability of the new system. Let's look at the next steps you can take to prepare for OnBoard limited release, and we'll provide you with some additional resources. First, we once again strongly encourage you to become board authorized if you aren't already. You must be board authorized to treat workers' compensation patients. To learn more, visit our website and search Become an Authorized Provider. For those who are already board authorized, you should conduct a review of any current systems and procedures to identify potential impacts. After going live with OnBoard limited release, the board will no longer be using paper for Parse or HP1 submittals, so please ensure your procedures are in place for day one. As we move closer to using OnBoard limited release, the board will be providing many opportunities to receive updates and training. Just prior to OnBoard limited release being available, we'll be providing just-in-time training webinars to provide you with everything you need to know for day one. Fact sheets, training guides, and video tutorials will also be developed, and website content is being continuously refreshed to assist you along the way. We urge you to subscribe for OnBoard news. You can visit wcb.ny.gov/onboard and select the Get Involved and Stay Informed tab. That's where you can sign up to receive email notifications, to be aware of resources, webinar, and training opportunities. We'll also be providing you with support channels so you know where to get assistance if you need it. We hope this walkthrough gave you an idea of what to expect from OnBoard limited release. For more information, you can go to the OnBoard webpage at wcb.ny.gov/onboard. That's where you can find an overview and timeline, frequently asked questions, and additional resources. And again, this is also where you can subscribe to receive OnBoard news straight to your inbox for both OnBoard limited release and the larger OnBoard project. Thank you for viewing this presentation on OnBoard limited release. If you have any questions, please email onboard@wcb.ny.gov.